And hello everybody, it's Town Planner Bill Nemser for another edition of Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling, and we're coming at you from Maynard High School, and well, we're not actually in downtown Maynard, we're outside of downtown Maynard, right? Who's today? I have Matthew today and Johnny G, the Ace producers in. And we've got a lot of interesting things to get to today. I'd like to thank everybody last week for showing up at the planning board hearing. We had quite a good turnout there for the signage regulations and the adjustment for the Mill and Main complex. It's coming right along. Any of you who are interested in taking a look at that can go to the town webpage and go to look under projects, and Mill and Main will be there, and you can see the approved plans there right now. But right now I've got a special guest. He's been on the show before, and I dragged him in today. And for those of you out there, I've probably heard of him and seen him a lot, but you don't know a lot about him, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about him before we get to it. My guest today is Assistant Town Administrator Andrew Scribner McLean. Andrew's been with the town of Maynard since December of 2013. He's also the Executive Director of Municipal Services. Andrew, how do you fit all this on a business card? That's the first thing I want to know. Between the name, the titles, what are you, small font or what?
I get extra large business cards.
Oh, very good idea. So, Andrew is charged with management responsibility and supervision over a multitude of functions, programs, services in the Office of Municipal Services. Translated, he's my boss. He also supervises the Facilities Department, the Council on Aging, and Veteran Services. Andrew has a Bachelor of Arts and Masters of Education from the University of Massachusetts Lowell. He studied at UMass Amherst and Suffolk Graduate Management courses. What is this real? Is this real? You did all that?
You're just making all this
busy.
up,
No.
Yeah, I have.
And he earned a graduate certificate in local government leadership and management from Suffolk University. Well, Andrew, welcome back to the show, and thanks for coming on again.
Thanks for having me, Bill. It's really great to be here.
It's Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling. Is your
Number one planning show in Maynard, Massachusetts.
We are the number one. We are the number one. I did see some of the other radio shows in town rated. I'm sorry to say that we didn't quite make the high school list, but the planning shows were up there.
We're definitely up there.
So today we're going to talk about two of my favorite topics, and we also have all our regular segments today, including Think You Know About Maynard, which Andrew's going to play, I think, and we have to take on one of our crack producers in that trivia game. And secondly, we're going to give you a rundown of goings on around town. But for now, let's talk a little bit about economic development. And the reason I asked Andrew to discuss this today was he was instrumental in the formation of an economic development committee. Kevin Sweet, the town administrator, and the Board of Selectmen had decided, I think about 2 years ago now, to actually create and get an economic development committee going. And then Andrew, I think you just pretty much started it up. Is that correct?
The town administrator made all the appointments, and I was one of the people chosen along with yourself, Bill. And then there are 8 non-town staff on the committee representing various parts of the community, as well as our state representative, Ms. Kate Hogan.
So there's a economic development committee, and that's a little different from some of our other town committees in that it is it's not a legislative body per se, right? It is or a regulatory body. It's a policy advisor.
It's an advisory board.
So they meet once a month, and sometimes more frequently, and anybody can come attend those meetings. That's correct?
That's right. They're publicly posted and publicly attended. They're held on the first Tuesday of the month at 8 a.m. in Town Hall. But that's always subject to change, so if you're interested in attending, you should check the postings.
Okay, very good. That's on the back of Andrew's business card as well. But moving right along into economic development. Now, in planning school, which was longer ago than I care to remind myself, in planning school, it was always taught that there is an interconnectivity of three components for society and for sustainable planning, and that is an economic component, an environmental component, and a social component, kind of a triangle, a triad. Do you think right now that based on what we've seen so far, a year and a half in with the Economic Development Committee, do we have that proper balance going where we are really recognizing the interconnectivity, if you will, between these different areas for the town?
Well, I would say that we certainly recognize the importance of it, and I would see it. I would describe it as a three-legged stool. If you only have two legs, that stool is going to topple over. So it is important to have all three of those components working together well, so the stool stays upright. So we recognize that interconnectedness, and our job with the Economic Development Committee is to make sure and to foster those areas of, say, the environmental leg that need to be improved, or the economic leg that need to be improved.
Three-legged stool. That's okay. That'll work. Triangle stool. I'm okay with that. So when we talk about neighborhood improvement, when we talk about community appearance, or we talk about really even having a magnificent council on aging, those are all sort of components in our economic development toolbox, I would say, because they contribute to a quality of life and a general desirability of the community. That pretty much sum it up for the way you see that connected?
It's a very, not to criticize what you said, it's superficial. It's that and more.
Andrew, it's a radio show. We have 30 minutes on this segment.
Hey.
What do you want?
You know, the expression, it's in the river. It flows and it's constantly changing. We're looking to build the economic stuff in the town so that it complements those things, and those things like, say, a strong COA or good recreation programs, excellent schools, contribute to the local economy in ways that are sometimes difficult to measure, but when they're missing, you can tell they're missing. And so that's part of our role and our job as an advisory board is to look to find balances in those things to strengthen them all.
So you see anything missing that jumps out at you, superficially speaking?
Superficially
Sorry.
speaking, we could certainly use a plotter in the municipal services office.
Right, I'm for that one.
Yeah, no, seriously,
We said we had to send scanning out today.
I think something they took away, we had a meeting earlier this week of this Economic Development Committee, and an expert came in and spoke to us about her experiences in the region and things that strong towns and strong economic development groups work on. And many of the things she talked about, taking the long view on building your improvements, and working on, for instance, planned development zones, which is a fancy way of saying, like our downtown has a development district. That's a planned development zone. But she was talking about all these things that were components of a successful program, and we're doing them. We're doing many of them. But the key point there was, she said, we need to take that long view. We can have all these great intentions, but it won't happen in 3 months or 6 months or a year. It's a 3 and 5 and 10 year program. So we're on that road. We're seeing these improvements coming. We're anticipating them coming, and we're going to keep working on them until they're here. And then there'll be new ones that we need to do. It never ends.
I like one thing that you've started doing, which is dropping into planner speak. I feel like I'm rubbing off a little bit in that. That's good. But it is something, I mean, when we talk about a long view, and, you know, it's a very frustrating part of planning, is that you really do have to balance what you're doing in day-to-day sort of transactional planning, as we call it, and still laying the foundation for a longer-term vision and a community vision. And that brings me kind of to the next topic that I want to talk about in economic development. And this is something I've heard. I've been in town a little less than you are. I've been here about a year and a half or so. You've been here almost 2 years, I think, right?
Slightly more than 2 years, Bill.
Slightly more than 2 years, okay.
Just reread that introduction.
Well, it was, all right. He just hit me, for those of you on the radio. I don't know if that's, we can do anything about this. But yeah, in any event, one of the first things that happened when I got here, people were talking about boom and bust cycles of local economies. And it intrigued me, because one of the reasons that I wanted to work in a town like Maynard was that I wanted to try to find a community that was really reinventing its economy, its local economy. And it occurred to me that while a lot of the components that are being reinvented or invented are being reinvented, so to speak, they're really, there's a lot of changes that are going to be different from the past. In other words, it's not going to be necessarily one big industry here. It's going to be a number of smaller companies, ideally, or factions, whatever have you. But the idea that a boom and bust is kind of part of the local economy, I don't know why that needs to be if you diversify correctly. And so I guess my question is that still relevant, this boom and bust thing? Because everybody says, well, it's boom and bust, the mill's going, the such and such is going. I don't know if that's true anymore. I mean, when you've got, is that something we've learned from the recession? Places that diversify thrive?
It does, and I don't disagree with the people that say that Maynard's history was boom and bust.
Right.
I think what you're saying and what we're moving towards is to diversify, to get more stability. We don't want the boom and bust cycles. Everyone's happy when it's booming, but everyone is miserable when it busts. Quick history lesson here. The mills were developed in the 1840s and 50s. They were gunpowder mills and then clothing mills. And they came and went throughout New England. Maynard isn't unique in that boom and bust cycle in that regard. But then in the 1940s and 50s, when the mill in downtown Maynard became an office park for the first time, the tenet of the town at that time was to diversify. But then a company named Digital rented some office space, and within 20 years they owned the entire property. This new boom had taken place, and 25 or so years later it went bust. So I don't think, a company moves into the mill tomorrow and has Digital's experience and starts eating up more and more space in the mill. I don't think we'll be complaining while that happens. But then if they decide to move to some other state or country or go under the way DEC did, we'll be sitting there kicking ourselves again. So while we don't own the mill and we don't, control everything that happens there, at that economic development level, at the town's philosophical level, we should be discussing with our residents, with our local business partners, that why diversification is important, why our tax base needs to be diversified, why our industrial base needs to be diversified, because that will help us weather the storm the next time something does bust.
So planning, zoning, rock and rolling. Today, a guest is Andrew Scribner McLean, Assistant Town Administrator of Maynard. So what do you think, when we talk about diversifying the economy, now we kind of alluded to sort of what you consider high-tech or manufacturing or something like that, but clearly there's an arts, culture, entertainment component as well. Now, we've talked before about the attraction of having a creative class to high-tech businesses, but they're businesses in their own right, and it certainly is an economy of its own. So would you agree that we have a total, right now, the stage is set to develop a number of components of our economy that are they're related, but they're different, and we can work on them simultaneously to enhance the community and the local economy?
Absolutely, but again, it needs to be intentional. It's very rare that a community develops organically in the way that we're describing we desire Maynard to develop in the near and long-term future. We need to foster that creative class if that's a goal that we have in mind. We need to foster the commercial development as well as good, solid, affordable residential development. All the, transportation issues. There's all these overlapping issues that contribute to strong economies locally and regionally, and they don't happen without good planning.
So that's very interesting. So I'm going to finish a segment with a little something from the American Planning Association. By the way, which my dues are due. I'll be coming to you for a little help there. The American Planning Association is a nonprofit organization that really has done some fantastic work for planning and forwarding the academics of it. And they note for small towns, there's 6 crucial ingredients for successful economic development. And I'm going to run through them, and I'd like you to get your reaction on each of them, okay? So the first is the community must take advantage of local resources, and such as our location, fiscal setting, financial resources, and the people. So I think at this point, right now, it's basically an inventory of our assets. Do you feel that we've done that right now? That we have an accurate idea of our local resources?
Yeah, we're a very small community, and I don't think it's going to take us very long to understand what our resources are. I think like some of the other conversations we've already have had, is not something that is just a one and done situation. You analyze your resources whenever you're looking at a new initiative. Oh, do we have the proper resources for that initiative? And they're constantly changing. You get talented people in, maybe they move on to other jobs, perhaps a more talented person arrives. So those are resources that you can start taking advantage of. Also, I know you're reading this from the Small Town Planning Handbook, a bestseller.
It was a gift from my great-grandmother, you know?
No doubt. However, more and more in today's world, communities like Maynard and throughout Massachusetts and even throughout the country need to be thinking about regional solutions. We're not little villages on the prairie that have to be able to do it all by ourselves. And if we can share resources with our neighboring communities, we can extend our resources without increasing our costs as dramatically as if we had to do it ourselves.
That's absolutely correct. And I mean, that kind of leads us into the number two. There needs to be a strong, comprehensive planning effort to guide growth and to improve the community with your efforts. So, in other words, as people, the community needs to improve, people need to see the success. And I would say that part of a small town's comprehensive planning effort would definitely involve regional coordination. I mean, I think all of us sit on one regional board or another, don't we? I'm on 2 or 3 of them, and I think you're on several. So I mean, I think it's fair to say that we're working towards that. And the question is, are we improving the community? And I mean, I'm looking around. People seem to be happy. I think there's a lot of work to do still, but I think we're headed in the right direction in terms of community improvement. Would you agree?
I do, and we will never get there, because as soon as we reach a certain goal or a objective of improvement in the community, we're going to set the bar even higher. There's always going to be something else we can improve, and that's as it should be. I don't mean that to sound as a negative. We should be constantly trying to improve and reach for better things.
And so I'm going to run through the others, and then we're going to take a quick break and get to our next topic. But good leadership. I think we're in a good position there now. We have excellent leadership.
Thank you, Bob.
Good. Yes, absolutely. So, just a little, just a little plug there. Good job training educational institutions are a real plus. We're working on some of those as well. Communities should be aggressive in pursuit of state and federal grants. We're trying on there to go full speed ahead. And guess what number 6 is? A little bit of luck. So that wraps up our economic development segment. And right now, I'm going to give you a little hint of what our next topic is going to be. Johnny G, can you fire up the Beatles? And welcome back to Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling, Maynard's only planning and zoning show, and I think it's probably the only one in the country.
Number 1 planning and zoning rock and rolling show in North America.
Nice. I'm Town Planner Bill Damser, and I'm with Assistant Town Administrator Anders Goodman-McLean from Maynard. And we're going to move right into our second topic. And this is something that's really a very interesting, I mean, as interesting as planning goes, it's pretty right up there. And I think that parking is something that everybody has a different opinion about it. And sometimes when I was a kid, you know, we should sit around the table and talk about parking sometimes. Do you ever do that?
You know, right after we talk about economic development, please pass the peas. We talk about parking at my house.
All right, enough picking on the planner. Okay, let's go right to it. Parking in downtown Maynard. Okay, and I thought about this as the first question. I'm just gonna, it's not even a full question that needs an answer, just a rhetorical question. Is a parking problem a problem, really? Or is it an indicator of success? And let's start from there. Because
wow, I wasn't expecting that.
That's why
yeah, you did.
I keep my guests off balance like that.
You threw me. Parking, if you have a perception of a parking problem, is that because you're successful or you're not successful? I would say if it's a perceived parking problem, you are successful, and if you have a real parking problem, then you are not successful.
Wow, that was I was not expecting that answer. But yeah, that's I guess that's a good way to approach it, because I mean the idea of you know, looking at who is going to be affected by parking and what the results are going to be. We have everybody from business owners, we have employees, customers of a store, we have community residents, we have the public.
Sure.
Everybody wants to park there, but you know, I can't think of a successful downtown I've been in ever that doesn't have some sort of parking issues. I mean, you can't necessarily park exactly where you want all the time.
So here's a simple take on parking. They're like taxes. Okay, no one likes to pay taxes. Everyone thinks their taxes are too high. In the parking world, everybody who wants to use parking thinks there isn't enough of it or it's too expensive. And from the status or the standpoint of a town planner or a town administrator, it's a huge cost center. Parking lots, parking spaces are empty most of the time. And by most of the time, I mean more than 50% of the time, depending on the location. Nationwide, there are more than 800 million parking spaces, not including people's own driveways. And there are only about 200 million cars in the country. So, we don't have a parking problem. We have plenty of parking supply, just like we have plenty of tax money. It's a matter of allocation and resource use. If we could provide instant parking when we run out on a very particular moment, people would stop complaining about it. But that would, you know, that's science fiction. The real solution, Bill, is parking management.
That's exactly right. I mean, for example, I mean, needs businesses that rely on short-term parking that are affected by commuters, sometimes, I mean, that is not compatible with a downtown retail business. And it's parking management would allow for different areas of parking lot to be designated for example, an employee who's there from 8 to 5. It doesn't make any sense to have them park right adjacent to a restaurant in a prime spot or a business or whatever the case is. How do you manage something like that? And you know where I'm going with this next with the residential uses. So let's work our way up to that. How do you deal with that? How can we manage it in downtown Maynard?
So if you are designing parking for something, you know, a blank slate situation, like let's say a mall, in the traditional planning world, you looked at the size of the mall and the number of stores expected and so on, and people would put numbers into their function machines and come out and say, you need this many parking spaces. But pretty much all of us have been to a traditional mall here in America
Yeah,
and
we have
know
planning standards that dictate that may be antiquated.
planning standards are
Right,
antiquated,
yeah.
Bill.
No,
No offense.
No, I'm
Um,
agreeing.
But you go to a mall nowadays, and most of the parking lots are not anywhere near full, except from mid-November to Christmas Day. That's the only time that the mall is banged out. And for a planner who wants to manage parking, that's a really bad resource allocation. And that's what we face in our downtowns. Many of our downtowns died in the 70s and 80s and 90s when malls became really popular. And the anecdotal evidence was, oh, they got plenty of parking, it's convenient, yada, yada. And now people are yearning to go back to those sort of downtowns, and they say, well, we can't because there's no parking. Part of the solution is maybe you don't need to park downtown. Maybe there's other ways for you to get to the downtown and utilize it. But then you already referred to some of those parking management issues, which is, you know, create parking for the employees and so on that leave spaces for the customers. And there's lots of ways of doing that. Some of them cost money. Some of them are just a matter of some simple things like signage. All of them require some cooperation and buy-in from those constituents, the employees, the owners, the customers, to make it effective.
Well, do you think, I mean, that it really requires a set of common goals that everybody understands what you're doing? Because the difference between driving into a mall and parking in this sea of asphalt, most people, I mean, I hope everybody, doesn't want to just hang out in the parking lot there. Whereas in a downtown setting, often it's exactly where you want to hang out. You know, whether it's on-street parking or immediately in a lot right off of it. So it's a
Agreed.
different animal.
I agree, and ironically, if you go to malls today, you're finding that they're starting to build shops on the outskirts, on the periphery of the parking lots. There's one in Lowell that's added a movie cinema and a Chili's and places like that, because those part of the parking lots were empty all the time. And now those parts of the parking lots have stores for people to go to. So they're almost turning those malls into new downtowns with the parking in the middle. And that's the way we have to look at this from the downtown perspective is people want to go there. Let's make it easy for them to do it and convenient for them to do it, and they'll be there. They would rather be in Maynard's downtown than in a vacuous mall somewhere.
So, I mean, you've been at some of the meetings I have, and for our listeners, I think it's important because it's reflective of a lot of the discussion about parking right now. People have mentioned we're losing a number of spaces for the rail trail. I don't know the exact number. I can't recall. Was it 35 or something?
It's less than that.
Okay.
26 is the official number.
Okay, and we lost about 36 with the when the deck came down, roughly, something like that. So then, let's call it 60, just for argument's sake. We have a new parking lot now off River Street, which is not necessarily everybody's first choice for parking. Let's say at this point, if they're going to the Basin area or to the Veterans Memorial Park area, but it certainly is a viable option for some of the uses in the area. What other improvements do you think are possible to make in the let's say the next 24 months or so that may help people that are struggling to accept this, realize that there really is actions are being taken to provide adequate parking, but without making it a sea of asphalt?
You know how excited I get about talking about parking, Bill, so I'm going to back up your comments just a little bit to give our listening audience a greater understanding of what we're looking at. Downtown Maynard from, let's say Summer Street up as far as perhaps the town hall on Route 27, and that whole area that we all identify as the downtown, Main and Mason Street and so on, contains about 650 public parking spaces. In addition to that, there are quite a few private parking spaces, several hundred depending on where you draw the line around downtown. But 650 that the town controls. Bill already mentioned that we lost approximately 50 to 60 of those spaces. Actually, we've only lost about 36 of them, but we are scheduled to lose another 19 to 25 with the rail trail. I don't want to get too wonky with the numbers here, but let's call
no wonkiness on my show, please.
Right, let's call it a 10% reduction in parking downtown, and then we have added 32 spaces, so we got about half of the losses back already. So Bill's question was, what can we do to offset the rest of that? Well, one thing is we can encourage people to drive less. We can provide public transportation to the downtown. We can provide opportunities for people to walk or ride a bicycle downtown. We're all aware of the rail trail coming in. It will be a recreational trail, but it will be, to some measure, a commuter or I'm going to go downtown and buy something rail trail as well. That will reduce the demand on parking downtown. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But we can also do things that are going to require a little bit more research. We'll probably need to get some professionals in. But there are things we can do with the measurement of our spaces and perhaps fit a few more spaces into some of our lots or on our streets where we have parallel parking. Getting a professional to look at the transit needs of the employees and the customers in our typical businesses downtown would help inform that. And then we should also be looking for opportunities to improve parking in other ways. So if we charge for parking where it's in highest demand or when it's in highest demand, perhaps that will encourage people to go to that lot you mentioned on River Street, which is closer to the parking deck that was torn down physically less than 400 feet than the periphery of many mall parking lots are to the front door of malls, not the center of the mall. So you can basically go from one edge of our downtown to the other in less distance than a typical mall is,
Right.
regardless of where you park. So when people are concerned about that, they're really not looking at the logic of what they do when they use a downtown or they use a mall. They're just looking at it from the pure convenience. Oh, there's a space, I'm happy. Oh, there's no space, I got to go around the block, I'm unhappy.
So one of the things I've been advocating for as town planner is both the naming and the wayfinding for all our parking lots. I'm pretty much come to the conclusion that a lot of people that come from outside the area are not familiar with our downtown and where the amenities would be. Something like a parking guide or some wayfinding might be something that's in not too distant future. Would you agree?
It's definitely in our near future. I think we do have some good signage in our downtown, but as we've been discussing, it needs to be updated. Things have changed since the last time we put in the wayfinding signage, and we need to make some adjustments to it as a result. Some of that I know is on the table for the downtown park that's being redesigned, or at least being studied to be redesigned. And there are other things that will impact these decisions. This is all part of that, taking that long view. We can all say, oh, we need to improve this. But the exact nature of the improvements and the time it takes, the resource allocation, can take a lot longer than some of us are patient for.
So I think it's safe to say that we're looking at this problem long and hard. It's a lot of it's a lot to take in, but you know, there's not a successful downtown, certainly around this area, that doesn't have some element of parking limitations, particularly as we bring in different uses at different times. I see that there's going to be some additional uses coming in that may involve residential, may involve business, additional restaurants, and hopefully community events. So it's going to be something we're going to have to keep an eye on, and we know that Andrew's going to be working hard on this, and I hope we can have you back to talk about parking, our favorite topic, maybe a couple times a year. We catch us up on it.
I can talk about parking all day long, Bill, but I will leave you with this one last thought about it. You had asked the question at the beginning about parking problems or parking successes. And in our downtown right now, I believe we do not have a parking problem. And the evidence I have for that is store owners who are telling me that they want more customers. And there are parking spaces downtown throughout most of the day and most of the week. So there's room for more customers. When the store owners are coming to me telling me there's no place for anybody to park, my customers are complaining that they can't find a parking space, then we may want to talk more about some specific parking management issues. But right now they're telling me they want customers, not parking spaces.
Okay, well, let's leave it there, and we're going to come back, and you're going to stick around for our new number one part of the show, which is the Think You Know Maynard, and you have to play against one of our local experts. You up for some trivia?
Absolutely, I love trivia.
Good. Well, in the meantime, let's leave you with a song I think is entirely appropriate for this topic we've been talking about, with some Queen. Oh, nothing like a little Queen on a Thursday afternoon. You a big Queen fan, Andrew?
I am.
Even
We have something in common.
there you go.
We will rock you.
We will rock you. It's from that. Now, Scrivener Clay. That's Scottish, isn't it? That's not
Mac Lane is Scottish.
right. Okay. What happened? Just the McLean part?
Just the McLeans from the Isle of Mull.
Okay. All right. Isle of Mull, Mulligan Tire.
Isle of Mull, west coast of Scotland.
Excellent. Very good. Well, they're not from Scotland anyway. Queen was, I think, from London. But anyway, that kind of sums it up for our last conversation. But now, are you ready to go to the newest rage in Maynard? Do you think you know Maynard? Now, I've got my two crack producers here. I today as Johnny G, or it's Matthew, not Andrew. Whose turn is it this time? Because what do you guys?
It's my turn.
And Andrew owes you a lunch, I
Yes,
think,
he
right?
does. Yeah,
Right,
he does.
right. Okay.
I do. I've never played this
Want to go
game
double or
before.
nothing for him?
Sure.
I've
Okay.
never played this game before. How do I already owe a lunch?
Well, you should listen more. You'd know. See. All right, this is for double or nothing, lunch with Andrew. And anywhere, remember I said, money is a hollow formality for this guy.
Of course.
You just go right out. Okay, who's gonna, we have to decide who's gonna start. The guest should, I guess the guest is gonna go first, right?
Of course.
Okay, these are toughies now. They're tough enough where I've made a multiple choice, which normally I wouldn't make it so easy, but I think you'll agree these are multiple choice is welcome. Andrew, we know that we don't have any buildings in town that are in the National Register of Historic Places, but we do have a property. What property is it? I'm going to give you multiple choice.
Okay, I'm ready.
A, Glenwood Cemetery. B, Ice House Landing. Or C, Ben Smith Dam. I'll repeat those for you. What property in town is on the National Register of Historic Places? Glenwood Cemetery, Ice House Landing, or Ben Smith Dam?
I'm going to go with Glenwood Cemetery, Bill.
Oh, one up. Yes, and hey, look at the crowd is going wild with that one. Okay, Andrew's one up. Okay, you got to get that meal going here.
That's right.
All right, Johnny. Okay, now it's Johnny. True or false? If you were living in Maynard 100 years ago, okay, you could get to Hudson or Concord by trolley.
I'm gonna go with false.
Uh-oh. Oh boy, that is true. That was, there was actually a street railway that ran between Hudson, Concord, and Maynard as part of a massive network of trolleys.
And we have the photos in Town Hall to prove it.
And it was actually better transportation 100 years ago. And there's another little known fact that a lot of these trolley lines were bought up by National City Lines. And do you know who actually ran National City Lines?
Is this another question?
No, this is just a general, this is planning trivia now. We're into the,
I do not know who ran National City Lines.
it was a conglomerate, one of the few antitrust violations that was actually brought to court. And it was a victory. That it was proven that Goodyear tires, Greyhound bus lines, Mack truck, planning, zoning, rock and rolling. How may I help you? Yeah, true story. There's a book on it.
Planning, zoning, rocking and rolling. How may I help you?
Okay, wait, we can't take a call in the middle of the game here?
Are the podcasts up?
Okay, so anyway, I don't know what.
Not yet.
The program just derailed thanks to my guest, Andrew Scribner McLean, who's taking phone calls from his family. Okay, but yeah, that's true. The book is called Getting There, if you ever want to read it. Stephen Goddard wrote it. It was a very interesting book, and it's a true fact, a factual-based piece of history where all the trolley lines were bought up by the, what turned out to be the automobile industry. So,
What's our next question, sir?
okay, well, you off the phone? Good.
Yeah.
All right. All right, back to Andrew. Now, actually, you've already sewn this up, but we have to make this, maybe add a couple more questions, see if we can make it a little more exciting. The town's seal shows the town clock. What time is the clock set to? It's a two-part question. And why? Now this is, you want to make this one double or nothing?
I'm going to defer this question to,
You can't do
to
that.
the DJ.
You look at that logo every day.
Really?
Yes, it's up when you're there at the selectman
I'm-
room. It's there. You're not going to tell me you've never noticed the
I'm
time
gonna
on the
I'm gonna
clock?
say that the clock is set to 2:30 because the clockmaker had a toothache.
You want to take a stab at this, Johnny G?
You know, I actually think I know this one. I know someone in my family said it maybe a couple months ago, and it stuck with me. I believe it was 12:10. Is that correct?
That's correct. You're correct. So you still lose on that one.
And
though, so-
why?
Well, why? Okay, why? We don't have a question for it, but I'm going to tell you why. Each day, and these are all courtesy of Dave Griffin from the Maynard Historical Society, who's been a big help with some of these questions. So I have to thank him for that. Coordinated time was sent via telegraph to railway stations. The local jeweler in town would go to the railway station at noon and reset his pocket watch to the correct time he'd walk back to his office, and at 10 after, he would press the test button for his horn. So everybody knew that was it was 12:10, and they could set their clocks to that, and it was official. So there you go. See what you learn on planning, zoning, rock and rolling.
See what you learn.
Okay, and let's do another song, and then we'll get right into what's going on. That's because we got a lot going on, and we're going to be right back to you. Let's hear some Talking Heads. All right, Johnny G. All right, love those Talking Heads. I know that's one of Andrew's favorites. Planning, zoning, rock and rolling. The final few minutes here. Town planner Bill Nemser with special guest Andrew Skidmore-McLean, who is the assistant town administrator and a bunch of other stuff there. But we're going to go over a little bit of our next segment on what's going on, and we've got a lot of stuff going on. Andrew, you going to sit in for this? Yeah.
Sure. I got one quick trivia question for you, though.
Wait, trivia's over. You got
So what college do the Talking Heads attend and be formed at?
FAU, Florida Atlantic University.
Absolutely
They're
not.
Oh, all right. Who was it?
Rhode Island School of Design.
Oh, that was close. All right. Anyway, this week, a couple of things happened. We have announced the second workshop for the Village Memorial Park redesign with CBA Consultants in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Our friend Clara Batcher is going to be back. And the really interesting thing about this workshop is going to be that it's taken all the input from the first workshop, all from the residents, from the stakeholders, from community leaders, everybody who wanted to have their input. They had a chance to give Clara some ideas. Now at workshop number 2 of 3, she's going to be back with those ideas, and we're going to take a look at some of the concepts she drew from that. So that should be pretty exciting. You're going to be able to come to that?
I believe so, and I fully support this type of stuff. You and I and others can dream up these wonderful ideas and try to push them forward, but getting the input from dozens and dozens of people throughout the town, hundreds in this case, yes, makes these types of ideas and plans so much stronger and better. Someone always comes in with something we haven't thought of, and I really look forward to these public hearings and public meetings where we get that kind of input.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of excited because, you know, you're right. We dream up these ideas and we sketch what we think it should be, or we kind of think about it. But this is going to be something that I haven't seen it. I mean, so I'm really looking forward to looking those over. Actually, you've been scheduled for a meeting the week prior with Public Works and Clara just to make sure that everything is reasonably feasible. And but I think that this is going to be an absolutely it's going to be an absolutely fantastic meeting. And I mean, the last one the place was full. I mean, the library, the Roosevelt Room, full. We had a lot of people interested in it, and it was really helpful. And I really think it was a fun activity for the community to have their hand in making something that's going to be a part of the community's future for the rest of the town's existence, I would think, wouldn't you?
Until it's time to redesign it again in another generation or two.
We got other stuff to redesign. Okay. Also, next thing I want to talk about, and I touched on this briefly last week on planning, zoning, rock and rolling, and have talked about it periodically. We have a BEEP grant. Everybody's heard of that by now. BEEP, Business Environment Enhancement Program. And what that is, it's a locally funded initiative to try to get some of the ideas that we've heard in the community that will help the business environment and give them some resources to go forward with it. Now, there's a couple of different versions of it. Some involve matching funds. Some might involve a total 100% grant. But we can't do anything unless we hear from you. And to get, even to talk about a community, a grant with the BEEP, whether you want to come in, you can come into my office anytime. Well, not anytime. That's what I get a little too excited. Not anytime. Call first, then come in, or you can write me anytime at bnems or at townofmaynard.net, and we'll get you set up with a time to discuss your idea for the BEEP. But really, we want to see some changes out there that will really help our businesses thrive. And our downtown is really, it's coming along nicely, and I think that there are so many good ideas out there that we'd be remiss if we didn't reach out to the public and try to get some of these ideas. And the BEEP really provides a vehicle to do that. What do you think about the BEEP? You heard anything yet? Anybody got some ideas cooking? I've got a few, but
There are ideas cooking, and one thing I'd like our listening audience to understand is that the BEEP bill says it's a locally funded initiative. The selectmen have wisely, in my eyes, dedicated a amount of funding that is equivalent to money collected downtown for parking, which we talked about earlier. We're not allowed to transfer those funds directly, so they've set up a comparable amount of money in our operating budget to fund this program. So essentially, money being paid for parking downtown is then going to be used to improve the town, not just downtown, but throughout the community. So those resources are going right back into the community where they should.
so, and that can be anybody anything from a small business. If you have something that you think would improve the community, and you have an idea, come talk to us. If you're a community group or even just a resident with a good idea, I would love to hear from you, and we'll see what we can put together, because sooner or later we're going to do something, and we've got so many great ideas. I'd like to get them from the paper and down on the pavement, as we say. That's planning proverb, as we say.
That's right. Back in the good old days, we sit down on the gravel, but now it's all asphalt.
Oh yeah, right. That's right. And let's see. Last but not least, I'm not going to be here next week, and Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling is going to go on hiatus. Either we're going to start our taped reruns of the show. I don't know. Are we going to have them yet? You think, Johnny?
I do not know.
Or you may find something else. So I'll be back the following week. And you know where I'm going?
Tajikistan?
I am not going to Tajikistan there. Although
Uzbekistan?
next year. Come on, I'm on a planning budget.
Mongolia?
Not Mongolia. I'm going to California, and I'm going to have fun in that warm California sun.
Wonderful.
And actually, speaking of
Good luck
sun,
to you.
yeah, my son actually lives out there, so that's where I'm going. And always my February break. It's a little change, but a week away will do me good. Recharge the batteries, so to speak. And then we'll be back with Planning, Zoning, Rock and Rolling on, what's the next one? February
18th?
18th, yeah. And actually, my guest is going to be... Oh, you guys are
February
off on the
25th.
18th?
I guess we are, yes.
Ah,
25th.
okay. So we'll be back on the 25th, and we'll get you all caught up. And in the meantime, I'd like to thank everybody for listening. This show is becoming more and more fun to do, and I hope the listenership is steadily creeping up. I think I've heard some things about it.
Thanks to our Cracker Jack producers.
Oh, they're awesome. Thank you. And thanks to Andrew Scrivener McLean for coming in today. So I'm Bill Nemser, town planner from Maynard, signing off, and I will see you at the end of February, and we'll be back every Thursday, but not for the next 2 weeks. So with that, let's leave you with a little Deep Purple to start your weekend early.